I recently discovered a reel of movie film that I took while I was stationed in Iceland. This reel contained film taken on January 23, 1973, during the evacuation of Heimaey Islands due to a volcanic eruption. Before showing the digitized video, I will explain the location and the situation which resulted in my being present for this unique geological event. This is a map of Iceland which shows the location of the capital Reykjavik. Also shown is Keflavik, the location of the large commercial airport. In 1973, when I was living there, Keflavik was also the location of the headquarters of the Iceland Defense Force and the largest American base in Iceland. The current population of Iceland is estimated at 360,000, with 70% of the population living in the southwest region near Reykjavik and Keflavik. During World War II, the U.S. was invited to take over the defense of Iceland and station troops there. In 1946, U.S. forces left Iceland. In 1949, Iceland became a member of NATO, and they remain a member today. In 1951, Iceland signed a defense agreement with the U.S. and American forces returned and remained until 2006. Also shown on the map is Vestmannaeyjar, or Westman Islands. The largest of the Westman Islands is Heimaey, located about 15 miles off the southern coast of the Iceland mainland. This is a postcard of the Westman Islands showing the town of Heimaey prior to 1973. The population at that time was about 4,000 residents whose main occupation was fishing. Note the upper right photo shows the 4,000-year-old volcano Helgafell. This is an overhead photo of Heimaey prior to 1973. Note the cone of Helgafell volcano, the houses in the town, and the sheltered port. The landing strip is visible running east to west with a small parking area to one side. Current published information on the airfield shows the elevation is 326 feet. The eastern end of the runway is defined by a sharp cliff. In 1973, the air defense radar site on the eastern end of Iceland was supplied by air using Douglas C-47 aircraft flown by the Navy pilots. Replacement personnel, food, and mail were all flown to the radar site by two C-47 aircraft from Keflavik. As many of you may know, the C-47 was derived from the commercial DC-3 aircraft and used extensively in World War II. Over 10,000 C-47 aircraft were built. It was known as the Skytrain, or Dakota, by the British and Canadians. In the darkness of the morning on January 23, 1973, near the town of Heimaey, next to the base of the old volcano, two men were walking. They saw the ground began to quiver slightly. Pebbles were thrown up in the air as if they were bouncing on a taut, stretched skin. Then the surface of the ground began to swell up, and soon it began to crack. It was described as if someone had taken a sharp knife against the flesh of the ground, and a mile-long fissure opened, spurting fire and embers. The fissure consisted of dozens of small craters, forming a continuous row of fire east of the town. At first, people thought that the old volcano had erupted, but then realized that a new and different eruption was occurring. Local authorities met and concluded that the safest course of action was to evacuate the island. Over 70 fishing boats were in port, and people were directed to gather at the harbor. A distress call was put out, and nearby boats arrived to assist in the evacuation. Many relatives from the mainland owned private aircraft, and they headed for the small landing strip. By the end of the day, most of the nearly 4,000 residents had been evacuated to the mainland. In this photo, you can see that the line of eruptions has subsided and that a single cone is forming next to the old volcano. By January 31st, a total of 73 houses had been buried in pumice, and 39 houses had burned. By the 1st of February, the height of the new volcano had reached 540 feet. It was decided early on to attempt to save household goods from the homes. A workforce of 100 Icelandic volunteers and 100 American military men under the direction of the Reykjavik fire chief began to systematically go from house to house loading trucks with furniture, mattresses, televisions, and kitchen appliances. The furniture and appliances were then loaded on boats and planes and taken to a large hangar in Reykjavik where they could be picked up by their owners. Here we see appliances loaded on a boat. Here we see furniture being loaded on a U.S. Navy C-47. This is a current map of Heimaey, showing how lava from the new volcano named Eldfell has increased the size of the island. Note also that the airstrip is now an airport with cross runways and hard surfaces. At 5:30 a.m. on the morning of 23rd of January 1973, I was asleep in bed when the phone rang. The Air Ops officer told me there was a volcano eruption in the Westman Islands and I was needed for an evacuation flight. I met my co-pilot at the hangar and we received a quick briefing and were told to assist as needed in the evacuation of the island of Heimaey. Neither me nor my co-pilot had ever been to the Westman Islands, but we found it on a chart and took off heading southeast from our base at Keflavik. Flying the 70 miles to Heimaey took about 20 minutes. As we arrived, we found that there was a line of eruptions from the base of the old volcano to the water's edge. We circled the island and were surprised by the length of fissure with flames that appeared to be 50 feet high. Note how close some of the homes were to the flames. The airport tower had no radar but was giving advisories on the large number of private aircraft participating in the evacuation. It was instrument flying weather and we saw many planes flying just below the ceiling. The tower advised us to land to the west on the lighted runway between two hills. The tower cautioned us to maintain 1,000 feet altitude until over the end of the runway because the hills on either side were causing turbulence in the high wind. The runway was actually a strip of volcanic gravel that had been graded. We found the runway and made a low-altitude pass to look it over. Look closely and you can see the aircraft parking area with several small aircraft and soon one comes flying by. Watch the upper part of the screen and you will see a small aircraft inbound to the runway. We are circling again as we allow other aircraft to land and take off. The tower is only advising us on aircraft he can see visually as they approach to land or take off. Note the large protected harbor. We later learned that most of the inhabitants of the island had already departed via the many fishing boats and the numerous civilian planes. Watch the lower right part of the screen and you will see another small aircraft going in to land. We land safely and begin to load televisions, refrigerators, furniture, and other household items. Our instructions were to haul and unload at the small commercial airport in Reykjavik and return for another load. This is a view of our C-47 that I took from the tower. Note the large 4-engine plane. We talked briefly with the Icelandic pilot and were amazed that he appeared to be the lone pilot and person on the plane. By now, the line of eruptions was starting to die out in places and enlarge in other places. Eventually, the eruption fissures consolidated in one spot and started a classic cone shape. A view of our other C-47 landing. Watch the large 4-engine plane that caught our attention when it landed. After it was loaded, we were again surprised to see only the single Icelandic pilot enter the plane and prepare for takeoff. We watched in amazement as this lone man started the 4 engines and took off into the clouds and weather. There was a small number of sheep that we transported by loading them tightly, covering them with a cargo net, and cinching it down until they could not move. Houses near the eruption were being hit by volcanic splatter and starting to burn. Furniture and other personal goods were being removed from the island as quickly as possible. We are now airborne and the eruption has begun to take a cone shape and grow in height. Light pumice from the eruption has begun to build up on the roofs of existing homes. Even the houses that are far enough from the volcano to avoid the flaming splatter are in danger of collapsing roofs. 6 inches of pumice and light ash on a roof act as a sponge during rain, and roofs begin to collapse. Lava is now causing clouds of steam as it runs into the ocean. A team of workers are pumping water from the ocean and spraying it on the lava to direct the flow away from the city and harbor. Fishing nets that were hung to dry. An organized group of Icelanders and U.S. military members were going house to house, removing furniture and household items, and bringing them to the harbor in the airstrip. On one trip, my co-pilot and I went outside the aircraft to watch the eruption, and on returning found that the workers had loaded our aircraft so full that we could not get in the one and only door to reach the cockpit. Some rearranging was done. Arriving at Reykjavik, we were met by a ground crew that quickly unloaded the furniture and other items and moved them to the floor of a large aircraft hangar. We decided to go view the volcano close-up while our plane was loaded. By this time, the eruption had grown into a black cone hundreds of feet high. Houses were being covered with ash and pieces of lava. I handed my camera to my co-pilot and asked him to take a quick photo of me. Due to the roar of the volcano, I could not hear him tell me that he had successfully taken the picture, so I continue to stand while he looks for me in the viewfinder. Meanwhile, I was unable to see the pieces of hot lava landing close behind me. Fortunately, I was not hit by splatter. In addition to me and the C-47 crews, the U.S. military provided 100 sailors and airmen as workers on Heimaey to assist the Icelandic volunteers in moving household goods and shoveling pumice off the roofs of homes. This film was taken over several days and several trips to Heimaey. During this film, you can see the volcano develop from a long fissure to a classical cone. The volcano had been erupting for several days while scientists were testing the lava to see if it is of the same type found in other parts of Iceland and other parts of the world. Specifically, was the lava of the same type as found in Hawaii? It was hoped that if the type of lava could be identified, it would help predict how long the eruption would last. A large column of smoke from the volcano is now rising high into the atmosphere. On clear days, commercial airliners begin flying closer to the volcano to provide a view for their passengers. One airliner flew too close and entered a cloud of pumice. Upon landing at Reykjavik, an inspection revealed that the windshield was pitted and the jet engines were damaged. Meanwhile, approximately 200 workers have been covering windows and doors on homes with sheet metal. Another group has been shoveling the pumice off the roofs of homes. Lava was flowing like a slow river, with some large rocks floating in it. Chunks of lava thrown up became larger, making it more dangerous to be closer to the volcano. Humans have an uncontrollable desire to get as close as possible to an erupting volcano. Pumice is created when superheated, highly pressurized rock is violently ejected from a volcano. It has a foamy appearance as rock. It is sold as pumice stone used for cleaning toilets and other uses where strong abrasions are needed. The plume and smoke from the eruption can now be seen from satellites circling the Earth. On one day, there were 40 journalists and cameramen visiting the island. After about 10 days, most of the household goods had been removed from the homes and transferred to the mainland. Another view of my C-47 being loaded with furniture. Normally, we use them to supply a radar site on the eastern side of the island. We are airborne again, and we can see the classic volcano developing and steam rising as the lava goes into the sea. A stream of water is directing lava away from the harbor and houses. Here you see my co-pilot and the two pilots from the other C-47 walking toward the volcano as I follow behind them with the camera. You will soon see me after I hand the camera to one of them. How close is too close to walk near an active volcano? Our answer was, when you can feel the heat through the soles of your shoes. I have just seen several large rocks thrown into the air and appear to be warning those with me. It was reported that for a time the fountain of flame was over 100 feet high. U.S. Air Force sent two C-130 cargo aircraft to Iceland to assist in removing heavy equipment from Heimaey. The most important equipment to be removed involved fish processing plants, heavy machinery and tools, and furniture workshops. When the Air Force pilots arrived, we took them on a familiarization flight to show them where and how we landed on Heimaey. Their first reaction was, "I don't see the runway." They quickly adapted and were able to move several $1,000s of heavy equipment from Heimaey. Next we see our other C-47 as I fly beside my friend to watch him prepare for landing at Heimaey. Watch closely and you will see him lower the landing gear and turn to line up with the runway. You can see that the weather was often cloudy, and combined with the smoke and steam from the volcano made visibility always difficult. The C-47 disappears, heading into the history books of aviation. The volcano erupted lava and fire for 5 months and was given the name Eldfell, or Fire Mountain. It is now 725 feet tall. No one died in the eruption, and miraculously, no one died in the evacuation effort. Nearly 500 men and 8 women were involved in removal of furniture, heavy equipment, and animals from the island. More than 400 homes and businesses were destroyed. Since the eruption, the people have returned, and the total number is about the same as before, 4,800. The lava made Heimaey 20% bigger by 5.4 square miles. The harbor is more sheltered than before, and the town is better protected from the wind. The airport has added an additional runway and lengthened and covered the old one with asphalt. The 1,000-degree heat from the still present lava is used to heat the town. The town has regained its position as Iceland's premier fishing port and is one of the more prosperous locations in Iceland. A recent observation is that they have more automobiles per person than anywhere in Iceland. This is on an island where you can walk to any part in a few minutes.